All right, we are live. I am really, really excited to be here for another amazing client success story. We love telling these stories to highlight the transformation that can happen when people are looking for positive change in their lives, in their relationships. And I'm here with Robert Dalbol, who reached out to us about mid-May of this year and is has such an amazing story. He's also very well spoken. So I'm excited to have a beautiful conversation with Robert here today. So thank you, Robert, for saying yes to doing this interview. And I'm thrilled to be able to share your success and your story. But I'd love it if you would just maybe do a brief introduction about yourself in your own words.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here and be able to share what's possible. So yeah, I reached out to Kitty late May, early May timeframe. At that time, my wife and I, we'd been together for 14 years, married for 10 years, and we were looking at the possibility of, what are some of these options that we can explore outside of, that what we would consider traditional marriage dynamics or roles, and that would fit our relationship better and really allow us to continue to grow and develop. During the program, what we found out is that there was a lot of issues in the relationship that weren't able to be solved right away, and we as individuals have a lot of growing to do, right? And just maintaining that growth mindset. So ultimately, the result is that we're no longer together. We stay and maintain focus on our co-parenting relationship and even a friendship at that. So I can go into some of those details later of what that looks like. But the main part of it is how are we really looking at it through our mindset, and what do we want and how do we want to show up?
Hmm. Wow. Yeah. And I want to really honor you, Rob, for just being so vulnerable here and honest and transparent about where you were and where you are at this moment. And I know I told you this even on our first call that I do a lot of work with couples who are either already opening up or in the process potentially of doing that. And sometimes they are on the brink of separation or divorce. And I would say roughly 20 to 25% of people that I work with, they do end up deciding that parting ways in some fashion might be the best thing for them. And what I like to say is, wouldn't if you're looking for happiness and to live your best lives, isn't it better to find that out in a short period of maybe 10 weeks than to maybe drag something out for 10 months or 10 years if it's not making you both happy, or if you want different things, or if your values are different? And that also means that 80% of the time people do decide to stay together. But either way, it can be a win depending on how you choose to look at it. And that's what I want to honor you about is you went in with your eyes wide open, and you went in realizing we don't know what this is going to look like on the other side. And I love that, and we'll talk more about the outcome as well, that you are getting skills to also co-parent amicably, to be friends, and to be creative even about what that looks like, continuing to look at it through the lens of what's possible from a consensual non-monogamous type of framework. So I'd love to maybe go back in time a little bit when you first reached out to me at that moment. If you could maybe just explain some of the issues that you were struggling with within yourself, within your relationship, and just take us back to like a snapshot of what that was like for you back then.
Yeah, and I will get pretty personal here. Like I don't have any issues speaking the truth, and I hope that helps others be able to connect and identify with these
Mm-hmm.
situations and grow from them as well. So being married for 10 years and with someone for that long, uh, the dynamic got into a very much, especially for me and my personality type at the time, who I was then, is very much in the form of I'm extremely happy. I don't want things to change. How do I make sure that things don't change? And what the result of that is a sense of trying to control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Control the outcomes of our future, which we obviously can't. Um, And Kitty, you and I have talked about this. It's really based or predicated on that fear mindset, right? Fear of the unknown, fear of the future. I like where things are right now. How do I make sure they don't change? And that creates, very can go into that toxic form of codependency, right?
Mm, mm,
So some of the things that I lost in the relationship were my identity, my feelings. What do I actually
mm,
want and
mm,
enjoy? And everything was about, finding enjoyment of, oh, I can do this and make my wife happy, or I'm doing this to make my family happy. Like I'm such the giver, right? Like I'm sacrificing everything of myself for my family. And ultimately, that what is that at the cost of? Well, that's my identity, myself, and the person who my wife fell in love with at the time.
mhm,
Um, and you know fear leads to that want of control, which then when that doesn't happen and you don't get what ultimately you want, anxiety is the outcome of it, right?
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I again, I honor your vulnerability in noting that you were in a situation where you were happy, so you were kind of white knuckling it, trying to hold on to it, and maybe even some of that dynamic was possibly causing some stress in your relationship. And we just had an honest conversation where I even was honest with you. I was like, "Hey, I can't guarantee what's going to happen in the future. It's we're going to have to see how this process unfolds, but what I can say for certain is that you're going to learn some really amazing skills here, which will also help you feel more confident and secure within yourself, which just by that definition will help alleviate some of that codependency and ultimately alleviate some anxiety, or at the very least, when you do have those challenging emotions, you'll be better equipped to know how to handle them. So I really honor everything that you shared. When you look back, that knowing everything that you know now, what would you say is maybe some of the underlying issues that maybe you didn't realize? You kind of touched on some already, like that there was maybe a sense of control that was fear based. Anything else coming up that maybe you didn't realize until later were some of the underlying
Ooh,
issues that were happening?
a lot. And I really think, um as I reflect back, this is a very systemic issue where we're raised not to be in touch with our individuality, and especially to our emotional maturity. We're raised in an environment where we have to be quiet so that we don't anger or upset the population around us, right? The group around us at that time. And so we don't ever learn the tools or techniques and how to
Mm,
manage our emotions. We don't learn, how we actually have control over our ability to react or take action at that time, right?
mhm,
And so I wasn't prepared at all for what I was going up against. Here we are, saying I do to a marriage that we expect to be together forever, and we don't have the tools to be successful. And
mm,
you're not taught those. And so coming into it and you say, wow, I have, this fear which drives me to control. And then when control isn't in my grasp, I have anxiety. And then what are the outcomes of that? And, you know, we, we just can't process it. So it builds and it grows and it becomes this beast within ourselves.
mhm. Wow. Yeah. And I definitely think that a lot of people who are listening either live or to the recording later will resonate with what you say there, including that I often say we're not taught how to be in a healthy monogamous relationship. And a lot of times we don't have good role models for that. I know I didn't really think that my parents had a great relationship. It wasn't very affectionate or loving, and they were together monogamously for 47 years, let alone taught how to be coloring outside of the lines of monogamy, doing something that to many people don't understand. So it is a big journey, and I honor you for embarking on it, you and your wife. So I'm curious, before you found this work here with Loving Without Boundaries and myself, what were some of the things that you had tried to navigate through that, and how did any of that work for you before that?
A couple of the things that just the typical therapy, right?
Mhm,
Going
mhm,
in and we did couples therapy a few years back, limited success. We didn't stick with it too long. We were able to communicate pretty effectively. But the problem isn't about communicating effectively. It's what do you do with that, and how do you act on that, right? And so while we were hearing each other say things, we weren't growing and maturing as individuals to protect that.
Mm,
And so you think you're going along and things are going fine, successful individuals, great jobs, great family, good
mhm,
friends. Um, and so really didn't look at it in terms of, hey, we have opportunities here to grow, maintaining that growth mindset, obviously, but not really actively participating in it.
mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I love how you're so great about continually coming back to that growth mindset, or also kind of stepping into your empowerment as an individual and moving away from kind of fear-based thinking or scarcity thinking, which is also where anxiety or jealousy can come from. So thanks for sharing that. And how did you first? And I actually honestly don't remember. This is sometimes a fun question to ask because I usually learn something too. How did you first discover this community and this work, and reaching out to me to make that first call?
Yeah, my wife found you, I think, through Facebook forums, and scheduled an initial call where it was just you and her. And she came
Mhm.
to me afterwards and said, we have to get on a call. We have to talk with her. And that was 8 months ago now, if not longer. And I wasn't
Wow.
ready. Yeah, I told her,
Hmm.
no, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. And one of the things that I had blinders on is it wasn't the fact of coloring outside of those traditional norms that we want to set aside for relationships.
Hmm.
That's what I was fearful of, right?
Mm,
And so I don't want to hear about it. I'm closed minded as far as this because I've got my way and it's the way I want to go. And it took me a while to see that there were other opportunities to define what a relationship can look like.
mm,
But
mhm,
also, once involved in this class, it's so much more than just that. It's, like you said, a monogamy alone is difficult, but when you have multiple partners and you have to learn how to communicate effectively and honestly and be your true self, so that you're going to hurt people and that's going to suck, but you have to do it,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's in the best interest of both parties. And so you learn so much more than just that side of it. It's so much internal reflection and growth, and and how you show up.
Mhm. Thanks for reminding me of that. Now that you said it, I do remember that I did talk to Amy by herself months ago, and you just weren't ready to have that conversation. I'm curious, what was the shift for you, or even that conversation where you were finally like, all right, fine, let's talk to Kitty?
Yeah, it really was at that point in our relationship. We were separated, and moving towards divorce, and actively dating other people at the time. And
Mhm,
we just kind of came together and said, well, we have an opportunity here to see, can we maintain a relationship in a different fashion that we both find enjoyment out of, while we're trying to sort through this stuff.
mhm. Yeah, well, I applaud you for having the courage to have that conversation and to embark on this journey. So, before we start talking about what that journey started to look like for you, were either you or your wife skeptical about what might happen, or also like how the framework of this whole process works, since it's obviously very different from traditional talk therapy and counseling. Here, there's coaching combined with an educational component, combined with a community. So were you skeptical at first of like, whoa, what are we doing here? Is this going to work? Or are we joining a cult? I often joke around about, or what came up?
I was more skeptical in, yeah, the results, right? Like, how is this going to work? I know who I am. I'm pretty set in my ways in terms of what I want in a relationship. And so is this really going to come out in the end where it works for both of us?
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, and
right?
I appreciate that. And it's funny for me to hear that too, because you seem like just a high achiever, like a person who wants to see results, right? And so to me, somebody like you is perfect for coaching because all a coach is really doing is taking you from where you are now to ideally where you want to be. And sometimes, and like you said, you can't control your wife, right? So you can't control what she was, where she was at, but what you can control is yourself and figuring out how do I be the best version of me regardless of what else is happening around me, and how can I do that from a non-judgmental lens. That's partly where I come in. Is I'm not trying to force you and your wife to do anything or to have a particular relationship structure. It's more, let's get you clear. Well, I'll stop there because I want you to tell your story. So when you started going through the program, this whole process, what would you say in the first few weeks were some of the results that maybe were really surprising or exciting that you noticed?
Just a couple of of key themes and tools that were brought up that were completely transformative.
Mm,
Um, and really, I utilize continuously to this day, right? And so one is we always hear about gratitude and how important gratitude is, but I
mm,
never got into the practice. I didn't get into much self-care practice. And
mm,
that was a big one for me as we first kicked off is that's a very important piece to this overall puzzle is you've got to take care of yourself first.
mm,
And to me, everyone has their own ways of doing it, right? And the Bragg book is one. For me, the biggest impact was practicing gratitude.
mm,
Um, Another one is writing that version of our own daring manifesto and how that actually comes out, right? When I wrote it, I took it as the mindset of who I want to be, right? Who ultimately I'm driving or striving to be. And as you progress in through some of these lessons in coaching, you just uncover that's who you are, and it's this obvious step, but it was a light bulb for me, and I go, I don't need to
mm,
work to be this person. That's who I am already. I just have to show up as that person, right?
mm, mm,
And those were two big pieces for me to say, I am that person, and then reflecting on how I show up as that person through gratitude.
mm. I love how you tied those two together so beautifully. Yeah, so a lot of it takes courage and it takes guts to look in the mirror, right? And to say, am I falling short from who I really know I can be? Or am I telling myself a story that I'm less than, that I'm not enough, or whatever that is, right? And so part of that, this whole process is to empower you to be the best version of you, to, as we call it, cultivating your superhero, and to remember that you're at choice. So I love that too. Like it's really about you getting to declare and decide, this is who I am, and these are the values that are important to me, and my needs are important, and my voice matters, and I'm going to be okay no matter what happens on the other side of this journey, And so it's kind of like helping you see that that's already who you are. And I love that you are very welcoming to that process.
Well, and it's a journey. I mean, it continues, right? And so that's
Mm,
like the first step for me, right? That is realizing who I am. But as we keep going on, there's so many more opportunities to grow as an individual and recognize it. One failure in the relationship, I was just talking to Amy about it, is we both are not good about declaring our boundaries or holding others to respecting those boundaries.
mhm,
And so we're constantly, even in this relationship, constantly violating each other's boundaries, and that causes discomfort in us, and then that causes, right, us showing up on the field of battle to say, well, you did this, well, you do this. Yeah, but ultimately I have to own where my boundaries are, and I have to protect those. And so that's
mhm.
another big step that I'm still working on growing into. How do I understand what my boundaries are, and then protect them?
Mhm. I'm so glad you brought that up because I've been doing this work for about a decade now, and I'm always astounded about how many people tell me I didn't even realize I had work to do on boundaries, or what are boundaries? I don't even know what they are, and not understanding like that's also a place where you're empowered. And honestly, it's each of our jobs as an individual to say, here's what I'm okay with, here's what I'm not okay with. Here's what I'm not willing to tolerate. Here's my non negotiable boundaries, and realizing that that's our work to do. And then we're making an invitation to other people, a request, if you will. Are you willing to honor these boundaries? And then we get to see, can we stay in a healthy relationship together? Because we're still at choice there. Like, we can choose to stay in a toxic kind of dysfunctional or codependent dance in any relationship, whether it's with one or more people,
Mm-hmm.
or we can choose, to move into a more healthy dynamic where you're really hearing each other, you're understanding each other, you're not showing up criticizing and attacking each other. And we still get to decide too, if the other person maybe isn't willing to go on that ride with us, we're empowered to decide what to do with that information. And it's been really amazing to watch you go through that journey of, okay, so this is who I am, this is what I want, this is what I know can be possible to me and for me. And remember, life is happening not to me, like I'm the victim here, but I get to decide how I'm going to show up, and life is happening for me. And everything that's even happening right now is for my higher and greater good, because I'm becoming stronger, I'm becoming more confident, I'm getting more clear about what I want. And sometimes that's a beautiful process, and it may mean moving away from some situation over here, but then we're also moving towards some other situation once we have created the room for that. And that's what's also powerful about this journey, is you don't have to do it by yourself. You've got me in your corner, you have B, our other coach, in our corner, and you've also gotten to meet such incredibly inspiring and beautiful people who are doing their best to live their most authentic lives. And that helps keep you going when it is tough. There are some tough days, and that doesn't mean that the tough days are gone, right? So I honor you continuing to do the coaching work here. So I'd love to ask you, I mean, since at the beginning when we first talked, you were kind of hoping, like, I really want things to say the way they are. Where would you, for anybody who's watching this and they think, oh my goodness, so they are getting separated, does that mean this didn't work? Where do you feel you're at now in terms of the result, the outcome, now that you've been through the 9-week program, in terms of like where you are today? Like, was it a success in your mind? What did you gain? How would you answer that?
Blown away by everything that's occurred here, right? Just a complete shift in thought process and mindset. Um, Taking it away from being a victim, things being done to me, where now you can really see that things are being done for me. And it really starts, right? Everything's so connected here. It's this fear mindset. You're so afraid, and your mind starts telling all these stories that, whether or not they're true or not, they're all based in fear. And so what do, right? You can't hold a boundary anymore because your fear of loss and your fear of this. You owe it to yourself, right? And this is where your confidence really starts to shine. When you can hold those boundaries,
Hmm.
guess what you stop doing? You stop creating these stories, or you stop believing in these stories, right? You say, thank you for trying to keep me safe, brain, but I got this, right? I know I got this, and this is who I am. Acknowledge and move on. And they all come together. And so that's a huge piece of it, is just to realize living in fear, right? And you were mentioning it the other day. Are you feeding your fears, or are you feeding your dreams? And sometimes you have to step into the unknown and let the universe play its course to follow your dreams. Because if you follow your fears, you're going to box it in, and you're not going to be open to receiving greater gifts that are out there. And that's why, it's amazing. Amy and I might not be together, but the fact is we're able to maintain a relationship at the time. And that's all I can show up for right now, is in the present, where it's in the best interest of our children, and we can stay friends.
Hmm.
Just on Sunday, I took her skydiving, right? And something we did together and as friends. There's no expectations of what comes out of the future. And I think the other thing is we can't hold on to the past, right? We learn from the past. Things happen. We all do things we're not proud of, and show up in, you know, in our worst, our worst selves at situations. But that's where we grow, right? That's how we learn from it.
Mhm. Yeah, so beautiful the way you said that. Yeah, I often share that all of our growth is outside of our comfort zone, right? And getting out of our comfort zone is also noticing fear, kind of wrapping your arm around it, saying, "Hey, fear, I see you. How's it going?" And same thing with anxiety and some of those emotions, recognizing it, having a conversation with it, leaning into it, and then dancing with it so that you can then get out of your comfort zone and grow, just like you said, have that growth mindset, step into the future. So I love how you brought up the question, are you feeding your fears or are you feeding your dreams? And by you and Amy, your wife, deciding to do this work, that's really both of you stepping into the unknown, stepping into the future and crafting your dreams. Because if we don't know where we're going, well, it makes it really hard to get there, right? We don't get into the car saying, I don't know where I'm going to go. I'm just going to drive around, so it's partly about, you said, like, we're going to jump into the unknown here. We're going to get some skills and we're going to shake some things up in a positive way here and trust ourselves and trust the process. So I'd love to ask, what do you think can be possible in terms of co-parenting, in terms of friendship, in terms of your future? What are you excited about that can be possible now that you've been cultivating and learning all these different skills that you're still conditioning to this day?
And the part that I love about it is, when you say, what are your dreams? Um, that can be intimidating for some people who don't have that concrete set, right? And they feel like they need to. I don't have it, but I know what some of my wants are. I know what my needs are, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and those are really what create our dreams. If I have a need to fulfill, well, how do I get there? That's a dream of mine. And so I don't think it's this clear cut, like, I'm going to go hike Mount Everest tomorrow. That's a dream of mine. That's pretty specific, but keeping it general and just knowing where you want it, it's directional, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the big part is I felt like I was on top of the mountain and I wanted to stay up there, right? And for any of those who, right, like, you capture the flag or whatever you're playing, you want to hold on to what you have. You don't, but there's enjoyment in the journey. And so we come down to this valley and we're in these low points and these shadows, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we get lost in that. But that's the journey, that's the excitement, and there's another mountain to scale afterwards that brings its own greatness. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we start talking about co-parenting and future relationships and what those look like, honestly, when I look at it, it's what do I want to be and how do I want to show up. That's what I can control.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to show up for being the best role model for my kids,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I want to show up and illustrate that even through difficult times, or not in complete agreement on direction or paths, that we can still maintain friendship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Move past things, show up on the field of understanding and not the field of battle. And it's important during that time to really maintain boundaries between each other, right? Because in these sensitive times, there's still a lot of emotion, there's still a lot of care, there's still a lot of, uh, um, triggers and traumas. And so
Mm-hmm.
we really have to make sure we're showing up on that field of understanding and ultimately connecting as far as what's ultimately what we're trying to do here. Are we trying to salvage or maintain a friendship because we do have enjoyment in each other's company for a set period of time? Do we, want to stay connected because we feel like there's a greater sense for the future? Do we just want to have that involvement for our kids? And those are the areas where we, still figuring it out, still trying to move forward and understand it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the work I got to do, and that's the work she's got to do, and ultimately the future decides what the outcome is for us.
Yeah, yeah. So beautiful. And what I love to highlight too is I really honor both you and Amy doing this work, because as parents, I imagine when I think back to when I was growing up, I'm 54 now, and my parents, they had they fought a lot. There was a lot of tension and negative energy in the house sometimes that I grew up in. And I just think, wow, if my parents had these type of emotion management tools and knew how to set healthy boundaries and knew how to let us talk about our feelings and our needs, which was a no-no,
Yeah.
it would have been very different. And so when parents come to do this work, I really want to acknowledge that, because how beautiful that you're learning these different, they're really like life skills or relationship skills that you're going to be able to pass down to your children, so you already are being a great role model to them. And so thank you for saying yes to doing this work, so that you're creating something magical for their childhood, and then how they can grow up and be responsible adults, right? So despite what's going on with you and Amy, like in terms of like the
Oh,
separation and all that. Hmm.
yeah, equipping them with these lessons, like you said, these life lessons that I wasn't aware of and my parents weren't aware of. And, even talking with my parents now, I can see they don't have the tools, right? And
Hmm.
so how do we make sure that we're setting our children up for that success, that they do have the right to speak their voice and their true authentic selves for what they want, right? What makes them happy.
Absolutely. So one last question before I'll start to wrap it up, which is, since you did go through some therapy and counseling, what is it about the way this whole process was put together, this system, that you felt was more effective versus when you did more traditional therapy or counseling? Because I hear that a lot, that people kind of have set in their mind, like, we're going to do traditional counseling, but sometimes that can be a very kind of painful, slow process, and sometimes even damaging. I heard that yesterday, actually, that they felt the therapy that they had was actually damaged themselves in their relationship. But I'd love to hear from your honest perspective. How was this process different, and how do you think it helped you to get better and quicker results?
Yeah, I mean, the process is different, right? So therapy is meant for a specific way of handling situations, and coaching and training is a completely different approach to it, right? Ultimately, they're both trying to correct the same or similar issues potentially, but this is just this class, this course, the way it's structured, the sense of community, the ability to come in and know that there's no judgment. Everyone understands that they're going through something, that they have struggles, that they're trying to be a better person, right? Everyone in this course is trying to be better, and that's
Mhm.
huge. Sometimes you can go to therapy and it's lip service. You're not trying to do better, right? You're just trying to convince the therapist you're a good person. Here, there's no hiding. You get called out, you get pushed, right?
Mhm.
You get challenged. You have to think deep. You have to really hold yourself accountable to
Mhm.
the results, right?
Mhm.
And you're only going to get from this what you take out of it.
Mhm.
I think the second thing is you get what others put into it as well, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's huge. In therapy, you're there by yourself, or
Mhm.
in couples therapy, right? But in this, you're here with a lot of other individuals who have very unique and diverse perspectives and what they want in life and how they have and their histories and backgrounds and where they're at. And you get to learn all that. You get to be a part of their journey too, right?
Mhm.
And so it motivates you to give more because you're receiving more in return.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Because yeah, we do a hybrid here of both one-on-one coaching and the group Q&A calls, and different trainings that way too. But it accelerates your growth, and it also makes it more fun. And I love how you said it also adds momentum and certainly accountability. And I love the reminder of holding yourself accountable. Like, you signed up to do this work because you want to be the best version of yourself, for yourself, for your, as a dad, as a partner, as a friend. So beautiful. So I'll just close here with, would you recommend this program, the Creating Happy Healthy Relationships program, to other people who might be struggling and having some of these similar issues that you described?
I would recommend this to children, to high schoolers, really, all ages and all different people, and it's my mental model coming into this, my perception was this is only going to be people who want to pursue a non-monogamous or consensual non-monogamous lifestyle,
Mhm.
right? And really, there's a part of that in here, but it's such a small part because in order for that to be successful, right, you've got to do all this other work, and
Mhm.
all this other work is the part that really makes anyone successful and completely themselves, right?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Awesome.
this is so important for everyone.
Thank you so much. And we do in our community here, we have over 13,000 people just in the Facebook group here at Loving Without Boundaries. And so I really think it's great, all different types of people looking for different things. So I appreciate you saying that this is really life-changing work for anybody. I'm just choosing to work from that non-judgmental lens of people who are coloring outside of the lines of heteronormative monogamy. So I'll close with just saying, uh, starting to say that if anyone here was watching this recording or listening to this on our podcast, know that help is here. There's beautiful work here to be done. So just the incredible successes that Robert so vulnerably shared can be your successes. So if you are struggling, if you are looking for help in living your most authentic life, if you're struggling with maybe insecurity, jealousy, guilt, shame, maybe the pain of infidelity from the past, and you don't want to go down that path anymore, I invite you to just book a call and we can just have a conversation. And that all starts with this link that I will read to you, which is lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. That takes you into my calendar. You just simply find a time slot that works for you. There'll be a very brief form for you to fill out. We'll have an honest conversation. We'll see if we're a fit to work together and if you're ready to start that journey. And I honor you, Robert, for realizing you weren't ready 8 months ago, but then you were, and look at the transformation that you've been able to achieve in your life. And I know you're still on that path, and I honor all your hard work. So if that's anyone here, just feel free to book that call. Again, lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. And Robert, I just want to say thank you so much for saying yes to living your best and most authentic life passionately and coming to this with all of your heart and soul, including this conversation. It really means a lot to me, and I'm sure it helped in a lot of other people out there. So thank you for paying it forward. That's a good karma punch for you. So thank you for
Anytime.
that.
Yeah, well, thank you, thanks to the community as well. I mean, all of you guys played such a huge part in this, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, we will say thank you for being here as part of our community. And we hope you're having a great day. And once again, Robert, thank you so much for your time.
Anytime. Thanks, everyone.